Coming up on AEA Amplified, the next generation of aviators. Let's meet Mac and David Copeland.
From the Aircraft Electronics Association, this is AEA Amplified, a podcast for aviation's technology experts, with your host, Jeff Hill.
And hello again, everyone, and welcome to AEA Amplified. I'm your host, Jeff Hill with the AEA, and thank you for joining us. This issue is coming to you in December of 2020, and I am really excited for this show we have. We have not one, but two guests, and with me today are father and son, David and Mac Copeland, who together have an incredible aviation legacy in their family. David, most of you who are listening who might be an AEA member will be familiar with David. He is the Vice President of Sales for Mid-Continent Instruments and Avionics in Wichita, Kansas. And that's an AEA member company since 1981. And we also have his son, Mac, who recently became a third-generation pilot. And he's also a student athlete on the football team at the University of Kansas. He's a junior in school and a redshirt sophomore on the football field. So David and Mac, thank you both so much for joining us today. I know Mac is with us from Lawrence and David is with us from Wichita, but before we get started, I do want to let our listeners know that Avionics News just published a special feature that came out today, December the 1st, on Mac, and you can read that story written by Dave Higdon at avionicsnews.net. So go on there, it's a great story, check it out. The Copeland family, obviously steeped in aviation tradition. What intrigues me, where I'd like to start, and maybe with David, you have an airport named in your honor, Copeland Airports. Let me start there. You are the second generation aviator, but tell us a little bit about the first generation of Copelands, your parents, John and Marilyn. How did they get started in aviation, and what was their passion for it?
Well, first, Jeff, I want to thank you for having Mac and I on today, and for AEA for hosting this. From these webinars and from your organization, really, we wanted to use this as a platform really for the future and continuing legacy of aviation for the future aviators, and Mac happens to just hopefully be one of those people. So thanks again for hosting us this morning. So really it kind of started, with my father being in the Army. He was a paratrooper, and one of the things that he said before he passed was, David, because we kind of talked when I was growing up about, that was really cool, and you jumped out of airplanes and all that. And he says, let me tell you, son, there's one thing you don't ever want to do is jump out of an airplane while the engine's still running. So a lot of my friends throughout the years have said, hey, let's go, let's go paratrooping, let's go over to Hutch, let's do this, let's do that. And I'm like, I'm gonna live on my dad's wisdom about that, because that was his early time as a paratrooper in the Army. And then basically he said, I really want to learn and teach myself to fly. I guess back in the day in the 40s and 50s, that's kind of what they did. So he bought an Aeronca Chief in 1946, and even before he had a car, he had a little motor scooter that he went back and forth to the airport and flew about every day, flew all over the country. And so that's really kind of how our family got involved. And he met my mother, who was a home ec teacher up in the Kansas City area, and he was in dental school at UMKC. And so they met, and she got the flying bug from him. And then once he graduated, he wanted to establish his practice somewhere that he could fly his family, future family, anywhere in the United States in one day in a single engine piston airplane. So that's how he chose the air capital of the world, Wichita, Kansas. So that's kind of how it all started. And that was, in the early 60s. Late 50s and 60s when he decided to move to Wichita and start his dental practice, which he was a dentist for over 32 years in Wichita. So then it was, okay, so if we're going to fly all over, Mom said, I want to make sure that I know what to do. So believe it or not, there's a lot of stories that we've all read about the husband and wife, and one of them being a flight instructor and one of them teaching the other one to fly. And sometimes that becomes really challenging in the cockpit, but they seem to suffer through that. And my dad taught my mother to fly, and initially, and from there, it really was my career started. people say, oh, how'd you get started in aviation and all that? And it started with my mom. She was flying in 6 weeks. She got her pilot's license, which was pretty amazing. She flew twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and then was ready for her check ride. And she was ready, and the instructor said, okay, so we're ready. We're going to do it this morning. And so she's ready to go, and she forgot about me. My sister was in school, and she didn't have a babysitter, so she took me along. So she put the bassinet in the back seat of a Tri-Pacer, Piper Tri-Pacer, and away we went. And I was 3 weeks old. So that was kind of how people say, how'd you get started in aviation? That was me. So I still have my hearing, although from all those days back then. But that's really how I got started. And the bug kind of started, when you start in the back seat of the airplane and you observe and you fly and share that passion as you grow up. I remember so many trips that we took. And in fact, my sister and I, we had the opportunity to fly to all 48 states. And he really fulfilled that dream of having a place in Wichita and in the air capital we could fly in a day anywhere. So that was kind of how we got started. And then, it's like, okay, so let's make this a business while he has his dental business. And he purchased part of Midwest Piper back in the day, and that was in the 60s. So we were a Piper dealer and distributor for the Midwest. And then let's get in the hangar business. So we were part owner of hangars that are still existing here in Wichita, Kansas, which is now Jabbar Airport. Back then it was Kenmar Airport where she soloed, and I was in the back seat. So that's kind of how it all got started in the 60s. And I'm not going to tell my age, but it's been a great ride. It's been over 35 years in the industry, working for great companies, and really supporting what I've kind of graduated into is now a legacy of, what's next, not so much for my career, but for other people's career, and trying to help them become superstars in the industry and helping them get started. So I'm not a superstar by any means. I am a little prejudiced to my son because he is involved in aviation now, which I'm very proud of. We have a great family, all involved in aviation. We've flown all over personally, and I have for business. And so have two other sons that didn't really get involved in aviation so much. We flew a lot in a private airplane to different locations. My wife enjoys flying as well. So it's in the family. Even my Bulldogs have been flying, so they love it too. So it's one of those things that it's kind of in your blood, as you know, they say. I have a huge passion for it. There's some cool things that kind of went along with, growing up in Wichita and the aviation, the air capital world, a lot of time going to shows. My dad, and as you know, Jeff, and Mac knows, I really don't like to talk about myself, but the opportunity to hopefully add material and add interest for people to get involved in aviation is really why I want to do this today. So it's really not about me, but he did start the Flying Dentist Association, which is still very active today. So as a part of his, weaving aviation and dentistry together, became very active. So he was a founder of Flying Dentists. He was also founder of the International Flying Comanche Society, which is still very popular because we flew a Piper Comanche all over. That was kind of our primary airplane that we flew all over. My mother air raced. She was in over 26 air races across the United States and some international flights. So that's kind of how it all got started. It's to think back all those days and years, all the great things that we've done, and many miles that we've gotten a penny or a dime for spotting an airplane before we had all the electronic devices to spot aircraft as we do now. That's what we did, and then I kind of graduated to the front seat of the airplane, flying co-pilot, and then sometimes slip over to the left side as well. So have a lot of great stories that come with growing up in aviation in that family.
So Mac, with your grandparents' story like that, and your dad, you hear the passion in his voice right there. You never really had a chance, I guess. What are your memories growing up with aviation, and what was that like as a kid?
Well, it's tough to follow up with that story. My father's side of aviation is a huge legacy, and it's a tough one to beat, and I look forward to beating that one day. First off, I'd like to thank you, Jeff, for the well-written article in Avionics News that is being published, just about my story and my background of aviation through my father. And I'd also like to thank you for the honor of coming onto your show to expand upon my journey of becoming a third-generation aviator. I really appreciate it. But yeah, growing up as a kid in an aviation family, it really started when I was about 3 years old, when I first started going to AirVenture with my father, and seeing the greats of Sean Tucker and Matt Youngkin fly his Twin Beach over Oshkosh, and the demos, and meeting the distributors and going to shows. I mean, it was something of a marvelous world of aviation that only the youngest generations of future aviators could experience. Of course, growing up, we used to fly down to the lake sometimes in our private aircraft with the whole family, and it was just an experience like any other. And a majority of my time as a young future aviator and my dad's side of the family, growing up, I learned how to check the fuel, clean down the airplane, clean the bugs off the plane, and that's just kind of how my story began, as my father taught me the ways of aviation and flying. And sometimes coming up, sitting right seat with my father sometimes in the Bonanza, and going all over the country. It was a great experience, and I loved it from the start. But kind of more expanding onto going to AirVenture, I volunteered with the EAA A team, which volunteered to help experience everyone from cancer patients to astronauts to celebrities, and show them what Oshkosh was all about. And just over the years, I volunteered for about 10 years on the A team, and it was just an experience like any other. And until that experience ended, when I had to go off to college and start my next journey of being a college football player, I was able and given the awesome opportunity to fly with the great Sean Tucker and his Team Oracle airplane. And let me tell you, that sparked my interest of aviation and pursuing a pilot's license, right off the bat. So those are just some of the experiences I've had over the course of my, beginning legacy of my father and his side of aviation, experiencing for myself, and hopefully living up to it one day.
Yeah, and you mentioned AirVenture, and for those of you who enjoy aviation or aspire to get involved in it, I encourage you to check out Oshkosh, Wisconsin, in late July, the first week of August every year, and do that, because it is an amazing show. Going back to the airport, for David and Mac, I understand that Charles Lindbergh actually landed at Copeland Airport to meet with Walter Beach in 1929, right after his nonstop New York to Paris flight. So how did that happen? How did Charles Lindbergh end up at Copeland Airport?
Well, he took 103 airports across the United States to go visit. It was kind of the tour to, after he took off, as when he came back, they had the largest gathering, which is really challenging today with what we've got going on, but over 4 million people gathered in New York City to welcome him. So that was a pretty cool deal there. And then he decided, with some investment from another gentleman, to go around across the United States. And so one of his stops was at Wichita, and the airfield he chose back then was called Rodden Airfield, which is now K-31, which was Beach Field today, but it was Copeland Airport. And so that was back in the 47, I think, is when he stopped there, and to meet Walter and some of the other aviation and city officials. And then what was really cool is when we had the idea, when Vern Jokes, who was the #2 United captain back in the day, when United, TWA and all those airlines, to be #2 with United is a big deal and a big honor. Vern Jokes flew the replica of the Spirit of St. Louis across the United States, replicating that same tour, and stopped at the airport where Mrs. Beach was there to greet us, and with my mother, and they arranged a really cool centennial opportunity with 50 years. And it was at the same exact parking spot at Copeland Airport where he stopped before, and we had big crowds of people, and it was really cool to celebrate that again. So, when Mac and his flight instructor, Ryan Reed, decided that they were going to do something, they surprised me less than 24 hours before that they were going back to make his solo at the same spot, same airport that all took place. So that legacy really continues, not only through, very famous aviators that really have, kind of been the leaders and icons in the industry, of which all evolve and change over the years. I have a small, part of trying to help others realize how important those things and how the opportunity for the future is for those aviators. So that was really cool to be a part of that. I remember those days very, very well. At the airport, I talk about, Mrs. Beach driving her light blue Cadillac with a white top to work, and I'd see her coming down Central right past the airport when I was going. And so those, a lot of those icons aren't with us anymore. The Lear family and, the Wallaces and some folks like that. And of course the Beach family. Those people, I knew and saw, and that was really cool. So the people that Mac, got to meet and the aviators that he met, and, one of them, was when I was growing up and made a big difference in my parents' life was Bob Hoover, who, took my mom for a flight in his yellow P-51 at Oshkosh. And so to kind of recreate that story, I did kind of surprise Mac for the flight with Sean Tucker. I kind of did the same thing. I kind of snuck him across the field on a Sunday and had it all kind of set up. So Sean kind of arrives in his car and says, hey, Mac, what's going on? And like, how does that guy know my name? And we'd seen him for years and years at the show, and then, said, hey, let's go take a ride. And so those kind of things, I think, hopefully are milestones in people's lives that they remember. Milestones that, meeting, Bob Hoover and having my mom fly with him, I'll never forget that, and that legacy, having, other leaders in the industry like Joe Engel, from here in Chapman, Kansas. I mean, he was a very good friend of ours and my family, and he still is at Oshkosh, and Mac, has met him and talked to him about aviation, and an astronaut like that, space shuttle. We've had so many guests at our home in the past. Other leaders in the industry, Russ Meyer, I mean, what an icon he is, and how he changed aviation. Jack Pelton, running EA now, and what he's doing for aviation. Another, kind of a soft spot for me was when we had the memorial service and the 99s, who is the National Organization of Licensed Women Pilots. My mom became president of that, and a very good friend of hers, Pat McEwen, who Drew McEwen, who is a leader at Piper, who I have been good friends forever and ever, and they used to, plan air races, my mom and Pat, and Drew and I didn't have much else to do but swim and be on their farm and ride horses and look at airplanes and fly all over. So those are kind of those memories that will never, go away, and those are kind of the things that I wanted Matt to experience, not only through EAA, but all the other things that we can do in experiencing air shows and aviation events, and he's even better at it than I am nowadays with the internet. He can pop something to me before I even see it. So with that, I was going to go back to Atchison, the birthplace of Amelia Earhart. Before Mom passed, she was on the Amelia Earhart board for restoration, and she got the house put on the restoration signature board, as well as renovating it and raising the money for that. But it was interesting that when we were up there, it was a July 4th afternoon that Julie Clark, who flies a T-34, flew a T-34 in air shows all over, very famous, beautiful blue and white T-34. She wanted to do a special tribute to Mom. So she flew down the river and all over Atchison with her fireworks and smoke on, and did a special tribute to Mom. So those are things that I will never forget. The Bob Hoover, the Julie Clark, working for Russ Meyer, Jack Pelton, and him, those are, icons that, it's still icons. I mean, some still with us and some that have passed on, that like Matt Yonkin and his interest and help with Mac, and, Sean Tucker and that special flight that he did. And there is a video, Jeff, that I don't know if it's on YouTube, but of Mac flying the extra. And I'll tell you, after he showed him, it was hands off. Sean said that, and it's no joke, because Sean will tell you the way it is, right? So Mac got to experience that and flew the airplane in a perfect loop. He went right back through his own smoke on the first time flying. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'm glad I didn't go flying with him, because it was a wet flight suit when he got back, but an experience I'll never forget. and one that I think helped propel him to become, you know, the aviator that he is today. So I know I'm talking a lot, but I got so much of really cool things that we've done, whether it's open houses at the airport, whether it was, you know, flight and safety courses, whether it was flight introductions. We did a lot of those through EAA, and just general. People come out to the airport and we take them for rides just because we want to get more and more people involved in aviation, and also introduction to airplanes, because we were also a Rockwell Commander and a Grumman American dealer at that time. Those are the kind of things that I think make a difference. You know, Mac and I were recently together, and there was a EAA fly-in here in Wichita where we went out on a Saturday morning, and although there was a car show, all the interest was in the airplanes, and we talked to people that, you know, it was their first ride, and the nervous parents that were standing there as their kids took off in an airplane with a complete stranger. Those are the things that make a difference. Hopefully that those kids and young adults, or whoever they are, will become involved in this great industry of aviation. So that's kind of my part of the airport, mixing it all together, and also for Mid-Continent and Todd Winter, you know, and his leadership team, you know, over the years have been very kind and allowing us all to use private aviation in our business. And it is a great tool for us. And Mac has seen that. You know, there isn't a day that he asks, well, you know, where is the company airplane and where are you guys going and what happened, and send pictures and all that. That's more of fueling that future for aviators, and having a company like Mid-Continent that really does, you know, we use the tagline, we fly with you. We really do. We fly with you with our instruments and avionics and power solutions, but also future aviators. When we pull up on the ramp in our aircraft and we show it off. There were people just last week, we were down in Texas on some flights, and people were like, can I go out and look at the airplane? Of course, let's open it up. Let's show you what we've got to offer in aviation. That's something that we will never say no to. And as you know, not only EAA and AEA, but also in MBAA and in AOPA, all the A's that are around there, and Gamma. Those are things that Mac's exposed to, not only from the meetings that I go to, but the shows that I've attended. He's an active participant, whether he's there or not. He's getting videos of the trips, and he's getting, you know, some caution from his dad. You know, my dad always taught me when I was flying, you know, always have a way out. And so I teach that. And when Ryan and him are flying, I was like, what's the weather like? What you guys do? What emergencies do you practice? Were you aware of that? So I'm that guy. I can't even imagine that, you know, you mentioned soloing 16 aircraft on my 16th birthday. That was pretty cool. It was fun. We had them all lined up at the airport. And I think back then it was the Eagle Beacon that did a quick story on it. But, you know, being able to do it off of our airport and get out of one and into the others, there is no way that I will let Mac do that, because I was nervous to death, and my wife were sitting out there at the flight safety parking lot across from the beach field or Copeland Airport, and watching him take off that first time. You know, there were a lot of prayers that went along with that flight, let alone 16 of them. So super proud of what Mac did, but I can't even imagine what my mom was thinking, you know, when I took off in those airplanes that day. So.
Yeah, such great memories there. And both of you have incredible stories on your first solo flight. Yeah, flying 16 planes on your 16th birthday. I don't know how you top that, but Mac, your first solo flight took place earlier this year, I believe on July the 2nd. And I think that date has some special meaning to you and your family. So what's the significance of July 2nd for you?
You know, the significance of July 2nd was the day I became the third generation aviator of the Copeland family. It was a date I'll never forget. It was a date that, you know, prior to soloing that night before, you know, I've read stories, I've read articles about, you know, former aviators of their stories of their first solo flight. And, you know, some of them jump out of the airplane and their instructor will say, hey, you know, tomorrow we're going to solo. And immediately, you know, all these wild thoughts go through their head. They don't sleep the night before, and, you know, everything kind of hits the fan, and it's just not a good sight to see, and, you know, stomachs start to churn. But, you know, that morning, I'll tell, you know, a little about the story. Was about 4:45. I woke up, and indeed the stories were true. I did not get any sleep that night. But prior to waking up, you know, I grabbed my mug of coffee, and it was labeled pilot fuel on it, and I knew exactly that's what I needed to jump in the airplane and get ready to go. You know, but prior to waking up, it was about 5 a.m. I checked the ATIS observation system, and it looked like there were some clouds and some storms off in the distance. So I was, a little nervous on if we were even going to take off by sunrise to do this solo. And prior to getting to the airport and meeting up with my instructor Ryan, we did a quick pre-flight check, made sure everything was running smoothly. Fired up the engine, one go, and it was incredible just before the sunrise. And as we took off from Jabara to land at Beachfield, which is formerly Copeland Airport, just prior to landing there, we flicked on the lights at Beachfield, and it was like a giant Christmas tree laying down on the ground. It was just seeing all those lights, be like, wow, this used to be Copeland Airfield. I mean, it was an awesome feeling. And I look to the right and I see the former hangars that used to have the sign on top that said Copeland Airfield, and the former taxiway that's still sitting there. It was just an incredible feeling to land there for the first time and get out. And luckily we were able to solo before the tower opened. I believe it was 6:30. And prior to doing that, I was able to walk around, look at the hangars, look at the taxiway, be like, wow, this used to be, the past legacy of my family, which is about to continue with the third generation of aviators taking off today. So prior to soloing, we did a couple touch and goes with my instructor, and, off in the distance, you could see some clouds forming out, and it was a little nerve-wracking at first. Usually when you wake up in the morning, it's still, comfortable weather, which it was that day, but I just knew in about a couple hours or so, the tower was going to open, there were storms rolling in, and anxiety was about to go through the roof. But prior to that, I got real comfortable with the airfield, and did about 3 touch and goes with my instructor, and we kind of went through the procedures. And there was a taxiway off to the right of the runway, and Ryan hopped out and he said, okay. So once he got out, I knew this was the real deal. And I had my backpack and my logbooks and all my information in the back seat, and I had I got my blue water bottle right here that I took out from my backpack and took a swig of water, swung the plane around, and did 3 stop and goes, and all 3 landings were like butter. I mean, it couldn't have gone any better. And just on that third stop and go, which was the requirement, my logbook, my endorsement from my instructor, on that third landing, I was, literally about to jump out of my seat and punch the roof of the ceiling of the airplane, because I was so happy that I just accomplished a feat of becoming that third generation pilot of my family, and to do it at formerly known as Copeland Airfield, where my father and my grandmother soloed, was just an awesome feeling. And it was a great day, and a day that I will always, look forward to celebrating every July 2nd, and just kind of reflecting on my experience as something I would never forget. So.
Yeah, and I might add up July 2nd, also the date where Amelia Earhart disappeared with her navigator on her next to last leg of her attempt to circle the globe around the equator. So another historical day in aviation, and another historical tie-in to you and your family. Once again, we are visiting with David and Matt Copeland here on AEA Amplified, and this podcast is brought to you by Avionics News, the monthly magazine of the AEA and the largest single representation of repair stations in the world. Avionics News is read by industry decision makers, including the owners, managers, and technicians of government-certified repair stations in more than 40 countries. These are the folks who sell, service, and install avionics, as well as maintenance facilities and FBOs, along with thousands of aircraft owners and pilots. And to meet all of your reading preferences, Avionics News is available in print, online, and via mobile apps for Android and iOS devices. For a free subscription, visit avionicsnews.net. And if you don't have it yet on your phone or laptop, you probably haven't downloaded the app. Fix that right now and get Avionics News on Google Play, or download it on the App Store. So, Mac, you're a student athlete right now at the University of Kansas, playing football, but after college, when you graduate in a couple of years, what do you want to pursue as a full-time career? Do you see yourself staying in aviation full-time?
Kind of to expand on, my future and pursuing a career of aviation. I like my mentors and my father introducing to, the introduction to aviation to my life, and my grandmother being a 99er and an air race pilot, and a grandfather who was a paratrooper, starting the Flying Dentist Club, and chasing the great legacies of Lindbergh and Kansas native Amelia Earhart. It's tough, to pass upon the opportunity to have a career in aviation, and as soloing and beginning that third generation of flight within my family, it's only right to do so. Unlike my other brothers who did not pursue a career in aviation, I want to be that young, the youngest child of the family to do so. More than likely after my career at the University of Kansas and graduating with my degree and a possible master's in the future, I'd like to, pursue my pilot certificate after this season, due to the season and the requirements and the, all the time and management I have to deal with that. But I'd like to continue to build hours with my aviation and license and everything, and possibly pursue a career in the commercial airline industry and possible consideration of the Air Force Reserve. But the overall goal would probably to pursue a career in business aviation, most likely general aviation. So.
Yeah, that is awesome. Hopefully that will all, and I'm sure it will happen for you. I do have one question because, I know we have a lot of listeners who are certainly interested in aviation, but being a student athlete, and myself actually having worked in that field for a number of years as well, I don't think there's a full appreciation for how much time and effort and commitment that it takes to be a student athlete, particularly at the Power 5 level in the sport of football. So how in the world do you find time balancing your football practice, study hall, and here we are in the middle of a pandemic on top of it. How have you been able to work on your private pilot certificate while doing all of that?
Well, the life of a student athlete requires a lot of discipline, holding yourself accountable, or specifically time management. A day in the life of a student athlete is, waking up, making breakfast, lifting, going to class, going to practice, studying, and then that's your day. But, along with aviation, in light of the pandemic, I was able to take advantage of the time I had while at home with my family, and to capitalize on pursuing my pilot's license and, doing my initial solo in July. But it's kind of, you have to have that time management. You have to have that schedule, every single day, all the while during the season, there's almost no time to work on the license and, fly every day just because of the demands of college football and school and a degree. But, all the while, I always continue to, look at general aviation news and look at avionics news, every day, and kind of stay on top and keep that aviation mindset, fresh in my mind every day and every week. That way, when the season's over and I come home to my family and, I continue my training, I can do so in a, refreshed state of mind to where I could continue to work on my license and, just have that essential equilibrium of balancing the student athlete life and, the future pilot life, and continue to capitalize on it. So it's a job, being a student athlete, it's a job. But all the while doing it as a third generation pilot is a dream.
So Jeff, on top of that, I was going to add, some more icons in the industry that it was interesting. We were at Oshkosh a couple of years ago, and Mac received a call from some icons in the training field, John and Martha King. Martha talked to Mac, and it was funny because, as we all know, if you've watched enough of their series, there's a lot of interesting comedy that comes along with the seriousness of flight training. So Mac and I would talk about that, and what was Martha's joke today, and what did John say about this, and and they make it fun, although, they've been around for many years, and there's a lot of different modes. But when, he was talking about getting involved in aviation, he's been self-taught. He really didn't have a course to go through, and the fact that he snuck it all in. So when Martha called him from the AOPA gathering on the lawn out there, it was pretty fun, because those type people inspire young people, and they've been around for a long time. And I think that's another piece of it that Mac's really kind of, very humble about how he's doing this. He studies a lot about this aviation thing. He studies charts, brings things with him. Whenever we're on vacation, he's got, I remember we're on the beach somewhere on spring break, and he brought the VFR charts out, and he's like, okay, so this week I'm studying, all the symbols and what these all mean. Do you want to quiz me? I'm like, dude, this is our vacation. What have you got all these, his whole backpack is down at the beach. So I think it's that dedication that he spoke of, and being a student athlete. I look at it as it really transfers over to the dedication, the focus, the time management, the passion, the special skills that are related to all those, from football and what he's learned through athletics, and a little bit of what we've taught him at home, have related really over to what it takes to be a good aviator, and to be smart in the cockpit and making decisions, not only whether you're going to solo or whether you're flight training, but for the future. I remember many, many things that my dad taught me, and my mother also, as a very avid aviator, to watch for, whether we're in clear flight. Always have a place that you're looking outside to possibly land. What's next? What can you expect? The challenges that we face today with what's going on with the pandemic, there's change. So expect change in the cockpit while you're flying, a change in the weather. My dad always used to say, wait an hour and the weather's going to change, in Wichita especially. So you can see it rain and snow, and then it'll be sunny within an hour. It's all happened. So those are the things that Mac's taken, under his belt, a little bit from me chirping in his ear, and a lot from, what I learned. But really having those, icons to help the basic aviation terms and conditions that the Kings have offered through their training course makes it really available for student athletes to get their pilot's license and pursue aviation. And if there are people more like that are making a difference, we wouldn't all be here. And AEA is a big part of it.
It certainly takes a lot of dedication and discipline to do both, and to be a student athlete. So congratulations to you, Mac. I do want to touch on a topic that I know is near and dear to both of you. And David and I have talked about this on numerous occasions, and that is the importance and the need for workforce development within our industry. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, overall employment of aircraft mechanics and avionics technicians is now projected to grow 5% between 2019 and 2029, and that is faster than the average for all occupations. Air traffic is expected to increase gradually over the coming decade, and that's going to require additional aircraft maintenance technicians. As a result, job opportunities are expected to be good, because there will be a need to replace those workers who are leaving the occupation, those who retire, and so forth. Right now, or actually this past year in 2019, there were 160,000 aircraft mechanics and avionics technicians in the United States, and that projects out to over 167,300 in the next 10 years. So I know it's important to both of you to help build that employment pipeline and develop the next generation of the workforce. But what advice would you both give to aspiring pilots, technicians, and aviators? David, we'll start with you.
Well, I think first of all, this is another passion of mine. I think if you I live by a term, and Mac's heard it a million times, that to live a legend and leave a legacy. And I really think about that is how do all of us want to be remembered? I want to be remembered by making a difference. If it's a small difference in aviation, whether it was my career in helping Cessna sell aircraft and market their aircraft and sell, or a Beechcraft or a Mooney, or at this company especially, making a difference is really what I want to do every day, with exceeding the customer's expectations. So I think with that, this industry is so fantastic. You get to meet so many great people, smart people, people in a variance of occupations, whether it's an air traffic controller, whether it's you, Jeff, in the media, helping others and get involved in aviation, so many different facets of it, whether it's technicians to work on avionics, or the future of what that's going to look like in autonomous flight, whether it's maintenance personnel to support legacy aircraft or even commercial aircraft or what's to come, supersonic type aircraft, whether it's, I think pilots kind of get the spotlight, but there's so many other aviation careers outside of being a pilot that you should be involved in. I mean, whether it's somebody working at an FBO, I was just spending, I think Sunday evening talking to a gal across the street at Jabera at Midwest Corporate Aviation about, what she does and how she makes a difference. And, she's an HR for another company. She came from Textron, and we talked about that and, how important it is and all the good, interesting people you can meet from around the world and their interest in aviation and helping, whether it also humanitarian. There's so many pilots that are flying. Mac just sent me this really cool video the other day of an Airbus chasing a Kodiak through Australia, through the canyons, down the river there. I mean, there's so much of that goes on that is important to share as well. So aviation is awesome, and get involved in it. I think it's important for organizations like EAA, AEA, NBAA, like I've mentioned before, to join hands and really assist in spreading the word like we're trying to do about, not only legacy and having, that as a first, second, or third generation, but the importance of, aviation. Without aviation, this world would come to a standstill. We think cars are important, but aviation and moving products around the world and moving people, it's so important. And yeah, we've gotten hurt a little bit and set back, but we're on the comeback trail. Every month we're getting better. The media possibly has strewn out, the challenges that we're faced with the pandemic. But I'm telling you, aviation, you go down and you watch Amazon fly their fleet of airplanes and Prime, you watch them on the road, you watch, at the airport across the street, private aviation has spiked because people, find that aviation, private aviation, business aviation is the way to get around, not only safely, but more efficiently. So I'm a huge proponent for that. And I want to help people, whether young or old, get involved in this industry, wherever they may land, and at least get exposed to it, because I think they're going to find once they get exposed to it, that, like I said before, highly educated, fun, awesome. It's, the worldly education that you're going to get from this. I tell people when I see people at the airport on an airplane or at the FBO, and I say, and they have their kids with them, I say, this is the most important education you can give them. They won't remember the toys. Mac will probably remember a few of the Legos we bought him that he put together, but he'll remember the trips that we took. He'll remember where we went in the airplane. Those in the aviation environment and all the people we've got to meet. Usually even if we're in a car, we'll go out to the airport and check out the local FBO and see what's going on, or we'll know. So I think that's the passion I have for making a difference and leaving the legacy is so important in this industry. And I share that passion with the AEA and to the Workforce Alliance that we are working with very passionately, because that's not going to go away. We're going to need to fill those statistics with bodies to carry on the next generation. It takes, the internet's great, but it really does take bodies to go underneath the panel, fix an airplane, get outside, make them fly, flight instruct, do all those cool things. So that's kind of my thing. As you can tell, I get pretty worked up about it, but it's so important that we leave that legacy wherever it may be with whoever it may be.
Absolutely. And you know what? It'll be general and business aviation. As you said earlier, dealing with the pandemic, it'll be business and GA who's distributing the vaccine, hopefully here within weeks, and with the search and rescue and all of that. So Mac, I know we have lots of listeners out there who young and old, high school, 10-year-olds, adults, senior citizens. So what advice would you give to someone who's aspiring to be a pilot or a technician?
Kind of to expand upon my father, as he spoke about the legacy of aviation and the younger generation, I believe exposure and experiences are two of the main factors that kind of influence that ongoing industry of aviation and continuing, the legacy. I know when I was younger and I went to Oshkosh, and, it's not every day you get to fly with Sean Tucker and, experience a ride along with 112 other Bonanzas, fly into Oshkosh all at once, 3 abreast, and also see the likes of Matt Youngkin and, all the military aircraft and C-5 Galaxies fly. I mean, it's not every day you get to see those and experience and be exposed to the passion of aviation that's in Oshkosh or your local EAA chapter. I believe being exposed to those experiences and being able to reach out to communities and get them involved with aviation is huge. All the while doing my solo, I am a part of the Air Capital Aviators Club out of Jabara in Wichita, Kansas. And that's just one little step of being involved with aviation, and getting others involved is, getting into AEA chapters, going to Oshkosh, immersing people in aviation, because it's nothing like anyone can experience that freedom of flight. One thing of flying that I really love about it is, immediately once I step onto that airfield and I close the door to the cockpit, everything kind of flies away. My football, my social life, my education, everything just kind of falls out of the way. And once I take off, I'm flying the airplane. I'm exposed to the controls. I'm doing, everything in my power to keep that airplane going, and using 110% of my airplane to do so. So experiences like that, keep my my fuel for aviation. And I believe exposing the younger generation to experiences and the likes of aviation is very important to the industry, and continuing to make it a better community every day.
And I might add, for those of you listening who may be wondering, okay, I'm interested, how do I get involved? How can I get started? Don't forget about the AEA jobs board, which is at aea.net/jobs. If you're an AEA member company, don't forget that you can post job openings that you have for free right there at aea.net/jobs, another member benefit. But also, if you are a job seeker or wanting to get involved in aviation, you can post your resume for free as well. And you do not have to be an AEA member to do that. So the jobs board is a good connection for those job seekers and connecting them with those who may have opportunities available right now. So David, before we go, I do want to hear a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what's new and exciting there in Wichita and Mid-Continent Instruments and Avionics.
Well, we're keeping our 56-year tradition of providing, excellent quality and service for not only legacy, but the future of aviation, whether it be electric propulsion with our True power solution products, and our actually Gen 5 lithium-ion battery solutions, which is fantastic. It's really, we lead the industry in that. We've got some really cool things in our engineering department I can't share quite yet, that we're going to hopefully introduce at the AEA meeting. The MPI, we're excited about that. We were talking about that this morning. We're gearing up for a fantastic finish to this year. We've all been challenged with things, but we've weathered the storm, I think. Like you said, the vaccine's around the corner, which is really going to help give. But we're as an essential business, we didn't miss a lick. I mean, Todd positioned the company for safety first, because our employees, as he talks about a lot, are our secret weapon. The technicians here at the company and in Van Nuys in California have an average on-bench technician experience of 26 years. That's unparalleled in the industry. So we put those experts to work to keep us flying, as well as our engineering department and some input from our dealers and distributors around the world. And with AEA, a big part of that is getting feedback. And so the future products that are going to come out of these buildings and our team to support the future of aviation. So whether it's lithium-ion batteries, or whether it's repairing an autopilot from an older aircraft platform, we're all here to do that. We want to keep people flying safely. We want to get them involved. We want to keep people coming into the industry. We're always open to showing people around or mentoring them as well. I think that's super important. So all that, we're really super excited about the future of Mid-Continent. We're strong. Being a private company, we can pivot rather quickly and adjust to the atmosphere. But I think we're looking for really great things in 2021 in the future, and the support that your organization gives us as well with the industry and young people getting involved. I like to kind of close with, the challenge that I give everybody that listens to this or is exposed to the article in your magazine and news media. Really get involved in aviation. Try it out. Get with somebody. Become a mentor. Go on a flight. There's so many opportunities. Go on the internet. Look for opportunities. There's scholarships that are available through many organizations. Whatever you want to be in this industry, I'd welcome to contact me. I don't know what that's going to do to my phone line, but we want to help people. That's the main thing. Make a difference. This is a strong industry. It's super fun to be in. Once you get in it, you get hooked. Once you work for a company like this, you get hooked as well. So it's all about the people. It's all about our great products, and the performance of all those, is how it's all wrapped up at the end of a nice package. So I think for Mid-Continent, we're going to see that just grow as it has been. We'd like to see it come back to 100%. And I think what I see on the horizon is success. I see people, kind of ignoring some of the things that are going on, super, concerned about safety as number one, but not only safety in the cockpit, safety of as individuals. So I think with that, you'll employ, my passion is not going to change all the way to the end, is that I want to help people expose and be safe in this industry and be the future of it. So thanks for allowing that opportunity, Jeff.
You bet. And of course, to learn more about Mid-Continent Instruments and Avionics, you can certainly visit them on their website at mcico.com. David and Mac, thank you both for joining us here on AEA Amplified, sponsored by Avionics News. And David, we do hope to see you hopefully at an upcoming industry event, perhaps the AEA International Convention and Trade Show, which is set to be in Dallas in 2021. Mac, any final thoughts on your end?
I just appreciate you allowing the opportunity to come on your show and just share a little bit about my aviation experience and my third generation legacy. So I look forward to in the future sharing some more of it.
Very good. Well, thank you both for your time and for sharing your story with us. And that's going to wrap it up for today. We hope you can join us again soon for another episode of AEA Amplified. And I invite you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget, you can learn more about the AEA at aea.net or follow us on social media at LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Until next time on AEA Amplified, so long, everybody, and be safe.